as people who experience same-sex attraction and are in a same-sex relationship and have also experienced SA, people tend to assume that we're gay because of our past traumas.
This assumption is nothing new. People are always trying to find the cause of homosexuality. Like, literally, there's so many papers on it. And that in itself is problematic. Welcome back to our channel. I'm Dumi.
Limru.
And today we're going to be discussing whether or not SA makes you gay.
Weird.
I know.
But you asked and we're going to get into it. So in this video we'll be discussing why the search for the cause of homosexuality can be a problem, the gay gene, or as she likes to call it, the gene. And then we'll discuss whether or not SA does determine or change your sexual orientation. So stay tuned, like, subscribe, and don't skip the ads. Because we got monetized. Did you notice?
Oh my god.
Yeah, and that's all because of you. Thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. Since we're talking about the origins of homosexuality, the word homosexual was actually used to describe same-sex attraction as an illness. And since it was seen as an illness, people were constantly looking for the cause so that they'll be able to treat or cure us. And honestly, some people are still looking today.
And even one study that we looked at identified two groups as people who would use the cause as a means to either justify their support for the LGBTQ or justify their intolerance towards us. One of these groups would be the Born This Way group, which believes that we deserve equal rights, the LGBTQ, because we are born this way and we can't help that we are attracted to same-sex people. And then the other group is, the you chose this lifestyle group, which basically says that we choose to be stigmatized, and because of that we deserve the stigma. So this is what we call the attribution theory, right? Basically, how people treat you will be based on their perceived cause of your behavior.
When looking at these two groups, you might think, one is more moral or right than the other. But when you really think about it, they're both kind of up. I say they're up because they're both kind of looking at the cause and why we are who we are, instead of looking at the people that choose to inflict, harm on us just because we are, how we are. Like, why should it matter that I, a grown consenting adult, chooses to pursue a relationship with another grown consenting adult regardless of their genitalia? Like, why must I only receive pity when it's something I can't control, like it's some ailment inflicted on me, you see? So it still kind of seems like they're trying to pathologize us, even though it's under the guise of, support.
The problem isn't whether or not people are being hurt. The discussion is more around whether we deserve it, which is ridiculous. So here's a question that I would pose to people who believe that because we're born this way, we deserve equal rights. If I wasn't born this way, do you think that it would be okay for me to be stigmatized and oppressed?
On the topic of being born this way or not, scientists have been analyzing the genetic code to see if there really truly is the gene. She's making me use this word. Anyway.
It's cute.
Is it?
It's the gay gene, and because there's a G, we add another G, and now it's a gene.
So, surprise, surprise, there is no gay gene. Surprise, surprise, there's no straight gene. They didn't see that one coming. But the thing is, they weren't looking.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. People are always looking to test whether, being gay is natural, but then is being straight natural? When they looked into what actually affects people's sexual desires, it's really like a lot of genes that come into play and interact with each other to make you like the things you like, basically. And one of the most important ones is smell. Invest in your smell. It matters to attract a mate. We're that primitive.
So a lot of people on the internet and in my hometown believe that heterosexuality is the default, and as quoted from Quora, which I admit is not a good, reliable source, but I don't know how to use Reddit still. So, anyways, they said they believe that heterosexuality is the default because of the rule of nature and reproduction. Male and female humans are biologically compatible with each other, and by definition of natural biology, are supposed to mate and reproduce.
Okay.
So, the last time you had sex, did y'all reproduce?
Was that the reason you were having sex, was to reproduce? Because if not, then apparently that's not the definition of natural biology. I don't know. I don't know. I love people on the internet always act like they have, doctorates.
That's so funny because here we are making a video.
I mean, but we put a disclaimer in the beginning saying we don't have doctorates, so at least we exposed ourselves.
Sexuality is beyond biological purposes. People don't just have sex to reproduce, and people don't just have relationships to reproduce. That's not the basis of this relationship, or a lot of the relationships you have. Like, mating and reproducing is a part of one's sex, but sexuality has a lot more to do with companionship than just,
Yeah.
Some people don't. Damn.
And still raise amazing kids together, still reproduce.
You don't even need sex
to reproduce anymore. Technology, hello.
Guys.
And also, sexuality does not determine fertility.
Yeah.
Okay, there are so many homosexual couples that are pregnant, have biological kids. Like, just because I'm gay doesn't mean I can't reproduce.
And do we need more kids?
Actually.
Like, do we still need more kids on this planet? I feel like we've overpopulated enough. Like,
can we fix the economy before we have more people?
But that's a video for another day. Also, nature doesn't work on a morality scale. Like, nature doesn't go, oh, sex should just be for having children within your marriage, and homosexuality is a sin. Nature doesn't care about that. So if that's your argument, no.
But the point is, people tend to think that heterosexuality is the default because it's common. But common does not equal default, right? But what does default actually even mean, right? Because we're coming with receipts today, right?
Oh, God.
So we looked it up, and Cambridge, right?
The
dictionary said a default is the thing that exists or happens if you do not change it intentionally by performing an action.
Drops mic.
Right. So saying that heterosexuality is the default, it's kind of hard to prove that now because of the way we're constantly being socialized into heteronormativity. Like I remember there's one Cinderella, the bedtime stories you hear, the cartoons you watch, it's all just heteronormativity. Even at church, you're like 3 years old and people are like, oh my gosh, this was your little husband, and they're going, saying, oh, you're still gonna get married, and I'm like, what does that mean? I don't understand words yet, I'm 3. But they're constantly just putting these heterosexual ideas into us constantly, even when gender reveal things, like people are being color coded so that the kind of genitalia they have. What is that?
Compulsory heterosexuality.
What is that?
Compulsory heterosexuality refers to the notion that individuals are taught to believe that they must comply with heterosexuality, which enforces patriarchy and intersex competition. So we're continuously enforcing heteronormativity, enforcing heterosexuality in every single thing we do, as she said. And that can make it very difficult to figure out if heterosexuality in itself is actually, the default.
Sexuality doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Lots of situational and dispositional factors go into influencing not just your sexuality, but the person you become.
True.
And sexuality is not a static thing, it changes, it's fluid. And I'm not saying people can't be the same orientation for their whole entire lives. I'm just saying a lot of people tend to change
And that's okay.
And that's okay. It's not, usually the question is it nature or nurture? And I would say that in this particular thing, it's a mixture of both. So now you take this very complex thing such as sexual orientation and you add SA, and that makes it even more complex. So how do you even begin to observe the changes that SA does onto your orientation when we can't really even define what orientation actually is? When it comes to orientation, we have same-sex attraction or preference or desire or pleasure, and that could mean completely different things for every single person. And then you also take into consideration the situational and dispositional factors that an individual goes through to even form their ideas of what orientation and attraction is,
and their genes
yeah. It's very difficult to observe. So how can we actually observe the changes that SA does onto something we have yet to define and comprehend? It's so complex, so we can't really have like a force and a result that can be for everyone, that can be encompassing for the whole entire group.
Like the LGBT it's not a monolith. People are different. We're all very different people. And on top of that, not everyone has the same reaction to the same experiences. Like we could be exposed to the same stimulus and still have very different reactions to it. There is no normal reaction to SA. Like, I know after my trauma, I became very hypersexual.
I became very hypersexual. I also developed an aversion of sorts to men, whether cis or trans. And it wasn't necessarily just men, but also the act of penetration, whether it was with men or with women. I just couldn't really do it. So it isn't just that. And just because I didn't like men at that time doesn't necessarily mean that I liked women all of a sudden. I don't think it worked like that for me. I can't speak for everyone.
So when people assume that people become gay after experiencing that specific trauma, it's again assuming that straight is the default. And you also fail to consider that people are assaulted because they are queer, which is a very, very common thing.
Yeah, very common.
Unfortunately, because especially in South Africa, there's a lot of cases of corrective?
It's either way.
Corrective assault, whereby typically men assault lesbians or gender non-conforming
or people
women.
They think are that's literally what gender non-conforming means.
You're mansplaining everything.
Sorry.
Damn envy.
I thought. Yeah. Oh,
you're always mansplaining. I'm so accustomed to it. When they assault them in an attempt to revert them back to normalcy, they think that, oh, you're only this way because you haven't had mine yet. You're about to learn. I can fix you. I can cure you. So it's kind of like, okay, so does it make us gay or does it
make us straight? But I feel like, you know what? It's both, because these people really think is like some magic wand that can poof you, biggity boppity boom, and you're straight or gay or cured up. But then why would it make you gay? Why would they use their... Okay, never mind. It's not supposed to make sense.
Clearly, they don't think this through, really. And it's the patriarch, because, are we surprised? A study we read actually showed that the long-term effects of SA are actually determined by the assault itself and the response after the assault. So whether you tell people, whether those people believe you, what course of action is taken afterwards, do you get help? Those things determine in the long run how you will cope after the assault.
And it also mentioned that the result is more likely a change in your sexual behavior rather than your sexual orientation. Like we said, I was hypo, she was hyper. We both reacted differently to these things, but our orientations didn't really change.
We don't know.
Well, I don't know. But I'm still bi as I was before, and she's still... Are you still gay? Are you still
we read this paper, guys. It questioned our whole identity as a person. I'm really struggling right now. but we will release a video on it explaining.
So for now, we're still there.
Yeah, we're still where we were.
But we're not sure anymore.
Bruh.
We'll discuss that in another video. Anyways, back to the topic on hand.
Scientifically, there is no evidence that SA determines or changes your sexual orientation.
The main takeaway from this is that it should not matter what causes homosexuality. I don't think it matters in any sense as to how people should treat you. We have what we call bodily autonomy. So whether you have decided to be gay or were born that way, it doesn't matter. Nobody really cares. Nobody should care. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. We are trying to have consensual relationships with people and healthy consensual relationships. I don't know, maybe like toxic relationships. None of my business. But that's the point. It's none of my business.
True. See you in our next video.
Bye.